Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. Photographs of ships appearing to be floating in the sky have been in the headlines of the British tabloids recently, and this proves two things. First of all, it shows just how misleading these mainstream media news articles can be and how misinformed many people will become because of them. And we'll also see how the horizon that we see is proof that the horizon is not curvature, and it is in fact an optical illusion, but it is not a mirage like a fata morgana or a superior mirage which these photographs are being passed off as. So first of all, we'll have a look at what they're saying in the articles. There's a few of them here. This is from the Daily Mirror. We also have one in the Daily Mail here, and we even have the BBC saying pretty much the same thing about these photographs. And then we'll go and have a look at these photographs and manipulate the images a bit to see where the actual horizon is and compare what we see here with proper mirages that are either superior mirages or fata morgana mirages. So in the Daily Mail article, it falsely claims that what we're seeing here is fata morgana created by temperature difference, and goes on to explain first of all these two photographs taken off the coast of Devon, and it says that people across Britain have been left confused this week as several ships appeared to be floating in mid-air due to a rare optical illusion. The unusual sight has been seen across the UK, with sightings in Cornwall, Devon and Aberdeenshire in just a matter of days. The latest example was spotted by David Morris while he was out on a stroll in Gillen near Falmouth, Devon. And he said that he was left amazed and very baffled by the phenomenon, which made it look as if a red liner was floating in the sky above the water. Earlier this week in Paynton, Devon, a picturesque coastal snap depicted several liners which looked like they were hovering above the sea due to the phenomenon. And on Friday in Banff, Aberdeenshire, health and safety worker Colin McCullen spotted another ship which looked to be flying and stopped to get a video of the unusual sight before investigating what caused the illusion. The phenomenon known as fata morgana creates a mirage when the sun heats up the atmosphere above the land or the sea, which creates a gradient of temperatures. A layer of warm air sits on top of a layer of cold air, causing the light from the ship to bend as it passes through gaps in air currents. Now, I ask you, can you see any evidence of light bending? It does look quite clear. So the article goes on to say that speaking about the latest sighting in Cornwall, a spokesman for the Met Office said the images appear to show evidence of a phenomenon called fata morgana, a rare and complex form of mirage in which horizontal and vertical distortion, inversion and elevation of objects occur in changing patterns. The phenomenon occurs over a water surface and is produced by the superposition of several layers of air of different refractive index. It all sounds very scientific and confusing, but actually what's really going on is very, very simple, as we will see as we study these photographs in a bit more detail. And here the article goes on to try and illustrate what is said to be happening in these photographs, where we have the cause of a fata morgana being warm, cool and cold air in layers between the observer and the object, making the real object appear to be elevated from its actual position. So what they're trying to say about these photographs is that this hard line horizon that we can see here is where the ship actually is, but it appears to be floating above that horizon because of the mirage effect caused by the layers of air of different density and temperature. We'll just see what it says here below the image. David Brain, BBC meteorologist, explained that the phenomenon is caused by, it should say there, they need another editor at the Daily Mail, conditions in the atmosphere which bend light. superior mirages occur because of the weather condition known as a temperature inversion, where cold air lies close to the sea with warmer air above it, he said. Since cold air is denser than warm air, it bends light towards the eyes of someone standing on the ground or on the coast, changing how a distant object appears. While there have been many examples of people spotting objects floating above the water, Mr. Morris noted people have also witnessed items below the horizon which have then become visible due to the optical illusion. The BBC article makes similarly erroneous claims, and this time refers to the same photographs by David Morris as a superior mirage. And in fact, it is the same BBC meteorologist, David Brain, talking about this photograph as he did in the Daily Mail, calling it a fata morgana. But here he said that the superior mirage occurred because of special atmospheric conditions that bend light. He said the illusion is common in the Arctic, but can appear very rarely in the UK during winter. Mr. Morris, the photographer, said he was stunned this time after capturing the picture while looking out to sea from the hamlet of Gillen. And Mr. Bain, the BBC meteorologist, said superior mirages occur because of the weather condition known as a temperature inversion, where cold air lies close to the sea with warmer air above it, and goes on to make a similar explanation of bendy light, as he said in the Daily Mail article. But with all of these images, we don't see any distortion of the ship. And again, what they're claiming is that the ship is actually on the horizon here, where it is supposed to be, but appears to be floating above the horizon because of all this refractive index and temperature differences, creating either a fata morgana or a superior mirage. They can't seem to make up their minds. And in the Mirror article, we see a ship captured floating in the sky in bizarre optical illusion photo. A giant cruise liner appears to float across the blue sky above the water off the Cornish coastline in yet another display of an eerie mirage phenomenon. Again, they're saying this is a mirage, but we don't see any distortion. We will see where the horizon it really is in this photograph in a second. And it says here that a ship has been photographed floating in the sky in another example of an incredible optical illusion. An entire cruise liner appears to defy gravity to float in the air above the surface of the sea in this photo snapped off the coast of Cornwall. Dave Medlock spotted the bizarre apparition as he was out walking his dog over the weekend. But the vessel was, of course, in the water, appearing to be floating due to a phenomenon known as a superior mirage. So they're going with the BBC narrative that it's a superior mirage compared to the Daily Mail's claim that it is a fata morgana. The effect is caused by light rays bending to displace an image and make it appear above where it really is. So again, they're making the claim that the ship is not where we see it, but it is an illusion, making the ship appear to be higher than where it really is. Let's just carry on with the story, and we'll see some more examples of floating ships. Mr. Medlock said, I took the picture on Sunday, March the 7th, when I was walking my dog along the seafront. It looks like something from Back to the Future, but I know it's a special type of mirage. The incredible phenomenon is likely to be familiar to seafarers and coastal dwellers lucky enough to have seen it before. But stunning photos capturing the phenomenon hit the headlines last week, introducing the spectacle to a far wider audience. So yes, there are now millions of people who now believe that they are either seeing a fata morgana or a superior mirage, when none of those is true. It's a much, much simpler explanation as to what's going on. And in another one of the photos highlighted in the same week, we have this one snapped by Colin McCullum, and we will see that he actually worked out for himself what was going on. He said, speaking after his post went viral, that he has since discovered what caused the phenomenon. He said it was caused by a cloud formation closer to the shore, which changed the colour of the water closer to the land. The boat being further away was in a cloudless area, and therefore the sky reflected the sea, making it look like the boat was floating. Well, he's kind of closer to what's going on. He at least realized that it's not a mirage, but it's something to do with the entire scene that we are seeing here. In comparison to those photographs of the boats and the claims that we are seeing a mirage, here is a fata morgana that is in this photograph taken in the Arctic of an island in the distance, and we can see that it is hugely distorted by the atmospheric effects. And so we do see some mirroring going on of the physical land, which appears to be where it actually is, but we are seeing that land also being reflected and miraged or diffracted. There are many ways you could explain what's happening here, but this is a good example of the actual distortion that we should be seeing with those boats, if we are going to call it, in this case, a fata morgana. And we have an explanation here of what's happening, talking about bending light again. And we have a similar image here, and this is being referred to as a superior mirage because we have the actual boat where it is, and then it is mirrored or reflected in the air above it. And we can see another example of that here, and again with an explanation of bendy light. So yeah, this is debatable what's actually going on, but we definitely do see this distortion, which from my own experience is most definitely down to the air currents that you have, the wavering temperatures that you have just above the surface of the water, or it could be land. We get very similar results, but in this case we are seeing most definitely some kind of mirage or distortion or diffraction of the actual image, but we still see the actual ship where it actually is. So if we just have a quick look at the weather first of all, during those times when these photographs were taken of the floating ships, we can see here that we've got around the 7th of March in Devon. We've got kind of overcast conditions, and we've got a very high humidity in the 80s and 90s. We have fog, and basically what we see in the weather conditions is what we see in the photographs. As I said, we have very kind of uniform coloured sky, which is in fact being reflected in the water. So the water's still there. We have this apparent horizon here, and the water continues, and the ship is sitting either on or beyond or even in front of the horizon, but we just can't see the water because at this point it is reflecting the sky above it. And this really proves that when we look at the horizon, this hard line horizon that we see in pretty much all observations, even when we have very clear conditions, we do get mirroring below eye level at the band of convergence where the surface appears to meet the sky. So let's have a look at these photographs in a bit more detail and show where the actual horizon is. I've opened up one of the images from the news articles in GIMP so that we can adjust the contrast and see where the actual horizon is. So remember that we are being told that the ship is on the horizon, which I'll refer to as the apparent horizon here, knowing that there is actually more water between the apparent horizon and the ship. But in this case, we are being told by the mainstream media article that the ship appears to be floating above the horizon because of this distortion going on in the air, creating a mirage. But again, all that's happening is we have the sky a very uniform, hazy, overcast colour, which is being reflected in the water beyond the apparent horizon that we can see. So what we do here is we first of all duplicate this layer, and I'll just rename it as a contrast layer, and then we can do a couple of things. First, we'll desaturate it, turn it to grey. Just do that briefly. Okay, and then we'll invert that. All right, so we've got a kind of a negative image there, and then we can do create that overlay. So now it's given us a much coarser kind of image, and then finally what we can do is do some Gaussian blur, and we'll see here that we now have a horizon right there. So the ship is actually on the horizon, and the water we can see now does extend beyond that, beyond the apparent horizon, and is actually there when we enhance the photograph. You should hopefully be able to see that. So that's how we can do that, and I've done that with a few of those photographs. So here's that liner again, and here's a more enhanced version where we see greater contrast and we can see the actual horizon. So it's very clear to see now that this is an apparent horizon. It's not anything to do with any curvature. It is just beyond the point where we see the actual surface, and the surface begins mirroring the sky above it. And here's one of those other photographs that was in one of the newspapers with the three liners. So we can see here that we've got this mirroring going on just beyond the apparent horizon here, and if I then show you the enhanced photo, we can just a little bit more clearly see that there is a very definitive horizon there, where we have these ships not elevated in any kind of illusion. They are exactly where they are. We see them exactly where they are. So let's just have a look at another one. This is quite a good one. This wasn't in the stories, but it's one that has been claimed to be a similar optical illusion, and it's very difficult to see. Again, this with the hazy sky, the same color of sky is being reflected in the water, but when we do the enhancements on it, we can very clearly see that there is a horizon there in this photograph, right? So this is showing without a doubt that there is water beyond the apparent horizon, and all it's doing is reflecting the light. This is the mirroring that occurs on the surface below the horizon. When conditions are slightly different, this gap between the apparent horizon and the actual horizon becomes smaller and smaller, but ultimately you always get this mirroring on the surface, and it will depend on your height. These are all taken at a very low elevation, so we get this angle of incidence of reflected light that reaches its limit as we look across the surface. So let's just now have a look at some footage I took a few years ago of this phenomenon of an apparent horizon and the mirroring that we see on the surface beyond that. The yellow line is the camera's eye level, and the camera's quite level now, so we can see that there is this band of convergence above what appears to be this horizon line of the surface. But this horizontal line is not where the surface begins to curve away from us in any way. It is just as far as we can see from this low perspective before the surface beyond it begins mirroring. This photograph of a fjord taken in cold weather shows the same optical phenomenon happening at the horizon. The purple line shows where the surface actually meets the shore on the other side of the fjord. But then we have this mirroring beneath that and going down to what appears to be the surface of the water. Even with a relatively high perspective above the ground, we soon get this mirroring and convergence. And we'll see as we bring the camera down that the apparent horizon, that hard line of the surface, will come closer to us. The lower we go, the closer the horizon over a flat surface. The surface is still there, sorry about the camera, but it is now mirroring. And as we lift the camera up again, we'll see the mirroring receding and going back into the distance. I'll bring the camera down again and we'll see the horizon come rushing towards us as the surface beyond it mirrors instead of showing us the actual surface. So in conclusion, it's abundantly clear from these examples of photographs that are very easily explained that the media will tell us something completely different and wrong and pass it off as scientific fact. And they are responsible for creating scientific consensus and having millions of people believe in things that really are not true, even though they are citing so-called experts. But we, as individuals, can be scientific about these observations. You don't need some kind of authority to tell you what's going on. You can make these observations yourselves and you can be scientific about it. And it also shows us that the idea or the notion or the theory that the horizon is geometric curvature of a globe is simply wrong, because what we have here is always an apparent horizon followed by mirroring on the surface before it reaches the actual horizon, which will be where everything converges when we look straight ahead across the surface of the earth, whether it's water or land. This is simply how our eyes work, and there is the science of perspective that governs any and all observations. So any one of us must take this into consideration when we are contemplating this. However, what's abundantly clear is that the hardline horizon that we see and is often passed off as a dip at the horizon by those who wish to promote their globe earth belief is simply not true. The entire globe model is based on this assumption that the hard horizon that we see in front of us is the beginning of curvature. In fact, it's as ridiculous as the idea that you would drop off the edge of a flat earth, because in the globe earth proponent's mind, the horizon is where the surface begins to curve down and away from us. So it just as well be a drop. Yes, it looks like that because it's a line where we cannot discern the surface anymore, and as we've seen various examples, and anyone can see for themselves, in any condition, whether it's hot or cold or humid, you will always get this mirroring on the surface. It might be close, it might be far away, but we'll see that mirroring beyond the apparent horizon and going up to the actual horizon, where the surface and the sky appear to converge, especially when we're looking straight ahead across the surface. So now it has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the horizon is most definitely not curvature of a globe Earth. Thank you very much.
Click subscribe and the bell icon if you'd like to receive notifications of new videos from Phuket Word.